returned from our trip and found a number of strangers gathered at the village. They were gathering from the country about, and a number of the masters were congregating for a pilgrimage to a village about 225 miles distant. We wondered at this, for we had been in that direction and found that the trail traversed what we called a sandy desert. It was in reality a high plateau covered with sand hills that the wind had shifted back and forth, and where but little vegetation grew. Beyond this desert the trail led over a small range of mountains, which is a spur of the Himalayas. That evening we were invited to accompany the expedition and were told we would not need to take the more cumbersome part of our outfit, as we would return before crossing the main Himalayas. The expedition was to start the following Monday. Of course, Jast and Nipro had everything in readiness, and early Monday morning we swung into line with about 300 others. The greater portion of these had infirmities for which they were seeking healing. All went well until the following Saturday, when there arose the most severe thunderstorm we had ever experienced. There was a perfect downpour for 3 days and nights, a forerunner of summer, as they called it. We were camped in a very convenient place and did not suffer from the storm. Our greatest anxiety was about provisions, for we were certain that this prolonged delay would cause serious inconveniences to all concerned, as there was but enough brought along on the trip, not counting delays. This delay seemed doubly serious to us, as we saw it that there was no place to replenish our supplies until we returned to our starting point, possibly 120 miles distant, a greater portion of which lay over the sandy desert already referred to. Thursday morning the sun rose clear and beautiful, but instead of pushing on as we had expected, we were told that we would wait where we were until the trails had dried and the river had receded, so we could proceed more comfortably. We were all fearful lest our provisions should be exhausted, and one of our party voiced this fear. Emal, who had charge of the whole outfit, came to us and said, "You need not fear. Does not God take care of all his creatures, both great and small? And are we not his creatures? You will see that here I have a few kernels of corn, or corn seed. I will plant them. By this act, I have definitely said that I want corn. I have borne corn in my mind. I have fulfilled the law, and in due season it will come forth. Is it necessary for us to await the long, arduous process that nature in her slow growth and unfoldment will take in order to grow corn? If so, we would be obliged to wait a long, hard time to obtain it. Why not use a higher or more perfect law given us by the Father to produce it? All that is required is to become quiet and visualize or idealize corn, and we have corn cured, ready for use. If you doubt it, you can gather it, grind it into meal, then make it into bread. There before us was corn grown and cured, so that we did gather it and grind it, and afterward made it into bread." Then Emal went on to say, "This you have seen and believe, but why not use a more perfect law, and bring forth a more perfect thing, or exactly what you want, bread? You will see by using this more perfect, or as you would say, more subtle law, I am able to bring forth exactly what I need, bread." And as we stood there spellbound, a large loaf of bread was in his hands, nor did the supply stop until there were 40 loaves upon the table before us, placed there apparently by Emal himself. He remarked, "You see, there is sufficient for all. If not sufficient, more can be supplied until there is enough, and to spare." We all ate the bread and pronounced it good. Emal continued, "When Jesus at Galilee asked Philip, 'Whence shall we buy bread?' he did this to try him, for within himself he knew full well there was no necessity to buy the bread needed to feed the assembled multitude, nor to secure it through the material market then in existence. He saw the opportunity to prove to his disciples the power of bread leavened or increased by the Spirit. How often man in the mortal concept thinks as did Philip. He was calculating, as human consciousness is calculating today, from the visible supply on hand. thinking he had only so much bread or so much supply or so much money with which to buy. Jesus recognized that the one in Christ consciousness knows no limitation. He then, in Christ consciousness, looked to God as the source and creator of all, and gave thanks for the power and substance right at hand to fill every want. He then broke and distributed through his disciples to those in outer need until the need was supplied, and there remained 12 baskets over. Jesus never depended on the oversupply of another to fill his need, nor the need of another. But he taught that our supply is right at hand in universal substance, where all supply exists, and all we need do is to create it or bring it forth. Just so, when Elisha multiplied the widow's oil, he did not apply to someone having an overabundance of oil, for had he done this, the supply would have been limited. He contacted the universal, and the only limit to the supply was that all the vessels were filled. The supply could have flowed on until this day had there been vessels to receive it. This is not hypnotism. None of you feel that you are in any way under a hypnotic spell. Let me say that the only hypnotism is the self-hypnotism of believing that each and every one cannot do the perfect works of God and create the desired condition or thing. For is not the need itself the desire to create? Instead of unfolding and creating as God wills us to create, you fold up in your little shells and say, I can't, and you hypnotize yourselves into actually believing that you are separate entities apart from God. You simply fall short of your perfect creation or expression. You do not let God express perfectly through you as it is his desire to do. Did not Jesus, the great Master, say, the works that I do, you should do them also, and greater works than these shall you do? Was it not Jesus' true mission here on earth to show that we, as sons of God, or man in his true estate, can create as perfectly and as harmoniously as God does? When Jesus commanded the blind man to bathe his eyes in the pool of Siloam, was not this intended to open the eyes of all? All were to see that Jesus was sent by the Father to show us that the Father intended us to create exactly as he creates. All are to do the perfect work, as Jesus did, by recognizing the Christ in himself and in all. I can go one step further. This loaf I just received and held in my hand is consumed as though burned by fire. What happened? I misused the perfect law that brought forth my conception and consumed that which I brought forth. Because of my misuse or not using rightly or righteously the perfect law, which is as exact as music or mathematics or any other so-called natural law. If I persisted in the misuse of the perfect law, it would consume not only that which I create, but would consume me, the Creator. Is the bread really destroyed? We will admit the form is changed, for in place of the loaf we have a small amount of dust or ashes. Has it not in reality been returned to the universal substance from which it sprang? Is it not now in unmanifest form, waiting to be brought again into manifestation? Is this not the way which all forms that go from our sight, either by fire or decay, or in any other way, do they not return to the universal substance, God, from which they sprang? Is this not the meaning of what descends from heaven must ascend into heaven? A short time ago you saw ice formed, without any apparent cause, as you perhaps think of it. Let me say that that is the same as creating the bread. I can use the law to obtain ice as well as bread, just as long as I use either as a benefit to mankind, or as long as I am working in living accord with the law, or expressing as God wishes all to express. It is good for all to make bread or ice, or any and all things desired, and all must press on to the stage at which they can do these things.